Okay, so here's Rand Paul now. Welcome to the program, Senator. How are you?
Glad to be with you.
Good to be with you. You know what amazes me is everybody is talking about Paul Ryan's budget. I mean, I've heard a lot about that. I've not heard about your budget proposal, which is which is Cipro, if you will, compared to the aspirin of Paul Ryan.
Well, what we decided is that the balanced budget amendment was a big part of the reason I ran for office is that I think we need a rule to force these guys to balance the budget. But in our balanced budget amendment, it says it would balance in 5 years, so I think we ought to have a plan for how we do that. I like Paul Ryan, and I think he's a smart guy, and he's helping the entitlement reform debate, but his budget doesn't balance for 28 years, and that's before you even talk to the Democrats. So
that's
if
crazy.
You're starting out with your initial position being 28 years to balance, I just don't think that's tenable or should be our position.
Okay, so hang on just a second, because I like yours because I think 5 years would give us some life. I think 10 years is just not gonna happen. Because it'll just so why don't you start at zero? It just when we sign this, we have to balance the budget and negotiate to about 5 years.
Exactly. You're even better than me on this.
You don't want me around. Actually, you would. You would want me around. We'd make a good team.
Well, the thing is what's important is about our budget that's different is that we do entitlement reform, but we go ahead and start the Medicare reform now. We let senior citizens have the congressional health care plan, and I think this is consistent with the Tea Party platform where we always said we don't want special privileges for congressmen. We don't want special carve-outs for people. We want everybody to get the same sort of attitude from legislation. But if you give all senior citizens the congressional health care plan, you do it immediately, it saves $1 trillion over 10 years. And does a lot of the things that Paul Ryan does, but his waits 10 years and then gives you the choice of staying in Medicare. So CBO scores his as a zero savings because I'm not sure anybody will choose to leave Medicare. The other thing we do is we do a flat tax of 17%, corporate and an individual. We think that would unleash a boom like you haven't ever seen.
Whoa. You just don't. Yeah, just not.
You almost need Barry White.
You need some romance before you jump right into the sex. I need a little foreplay before you start saying things like that. 17% flat. Yeah. I see what you're saying. That's right.
Well, I think what you'd see is you'd really see the economy grow like it hasn't grown in a long time. That would be cutting our corporate tax in half. There'd be very few deductions, so it'd be much simpler. And I think really that's what we need to get everybody off the sidelines from basically not investing.
Say it to us, Senator.
You're regretting this interview right now, aren't you, Brad? Okay, Senator,
no response.
I think that's no response. I think that is 17% flat tax would be such a start to this engine. Such a start to this engine. Now, let me ask you this. The odds that anyone in Washington is going to even listen to you on this. Because you're an extremist, you know. You say stuff like this, you're an extremist.
Well, if you're for balancing the budget around here, that is an extreme position. You're right.
It is. So what are the odds? So how can we help you get this done?
Well, letting your 14 million listeners in on the clue is always a big help, so we're glad to be on and talking about it. I've spoken with the conservatives in the House this week. This is the Republican Study Committee, and there's over 100 of them. And I think because of my introducing the 5-year budget, I think they're going to introduce a conservative alternative also to Paul Ryan's budget that does balance. And what I've told, and I like Congressman Ryan, he's a smart guy, and I compliment him on a lot of things. When I've talked to him, I've said, you're getting the punishment for introducing entitlement reform, but you're not getting the holy grail, which will be the complements of balancing the budget. So if you don't balance it, all you're doing is setting yourself up to take the punishment without really getting the glory. And I think he recognizes this, but just is not sure he can pass a more strict budget. But I think actually he could if he took more leadership on letting it balance quicker.
What do you do in your budget to defense?
We actually are able to not have the sequester, and the reason we are able to do that is we eliminate 4 departments and we cut a lot of spending. So instead of having military spending go down like the sequester would have it, ours actually allows for a gradual increase in military spending over time.
So because how does that work?
Well, what we do is we eliminate so much in spending. We eliminate commerce, education, energy, and HUD,
hold on,
and that's a couple $1 trillion there over 10 years.
Wow! Your budget proposes to eliminate the departments of
Barry White, please. Turn the lights down. Light some candles here.
Energy and HUD.
Name them twice, Glenn. You're going to ask me to name them. Wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's fantastic.
So you're able to do, because I love Rand Paul's budgets. There's no doubt about it. But the one thing I'm sensitive on is when Rand Paul's proposing a budget, what happens to defense? And I think this is a good question. You're telling me that you are actually increasing defense spending in this budget and still doing all this stuff?
Yes, because what we do is by zeroing out, the Department of Education is a $100 billion agency. By zeroing that out, that's $1 trillion over 10 years right there.
Wait, hang on.
Wow.
You abolish the education, Department of Education?
Well, that used to be part of the Republican platform. It was Ronald Reagan's idea, and for 20 years it was part of our platform. Then we lost our way, and we actually doubled the size of the Department of Education under George Bush and Rick Santorum's guidance.
How do you deal with the conniption fit the left will have over this?
Hang on just a second.
Well, I guess we take it for what it's worth, and we realize that they're on the other side of this. But we also realize the country's going broke. That we are now borrowing $50,000 a second, and it's untenable. So they can squawk all they want, but we're trying to save the country while they're letting Rome burn.
How are you? Are you paying attention, and the people around you? Anybody really paying attention to the radicals that are what the Occupy people are? Who they're in bed with, how they're connected to the government and to uber powerful left groups, and what they're planning. I mean, they are planning to set our country on fire this summer. Absolutely
I'm concerned about the whole philosophy that if you've got 3 cars and I have a moped, that I should send the president over your house to get one of your cars, because the next step is, if you accept that philosophy of redistribution of wealth, why wait for the president to get one of your cars? Why don't I go to your house with a brick and take what I want, or go to the storefront? So the idea that the government's job is to take from those who succeed and give to those who don't, once we accept that philosophy, it's a short step from that to violence. And so I do worry about accepting this idea of transferring wealth from one group to the next, because in times when there's a crisis and people don't get their checks, like in Greece, then they riot and say, it's mine. You promised me my check, and so I'll just go to the storefront and take what I want.
Okay, well, I mean, I know it's a little soon for this. But I believe we've just had a wild time together anyway, so I feel appropriate to say this. Will you is there a candidate that is running that has a really, really nasty cold that could go off the rails and get really sick, and could you be their vice president?
Well, I've told people if there's any kind of secret plan for that to happen, it's so secret they haven't even told me about it yet.
There's nobody there. I mean, Rand, you are what the Tea Party, I believe, is looking for. You have, in just the last 8 minutes, said, there's a lot of other topics that we should talk about, but you've said more in the last 8 minutes than I think most of these candidates have said the entire race.
In 8 months.
Yeah.
Well,
18 months.
I made the mistake of reading this book broke before I got into office. Got all the information muddled in my head.
I have to tell you. Okay, so give me a plan of what you want people to do.
I think call your congressmen, your senators, tell them that we have to balance the budget, and it's the most important thing facing our country. It's the number one threat to our national security, and you have to cut spending. It's not about raising taxes. It's not about punishing your neighbor.
Should they ask for you? Should they ask for the Rand Paul budget proposal?
Absolutely. Tell them you want to balance the budget in 5 years, and they need to look at the Rand Paul budget. And I think, last year we got 7 votes in the Senate for it, which was 7 more votes than the president got for his budget. So I figure I'm on a roll. We may double or triple that this year.
Someday you can dream. Someday you'll get 21. It'll be amazing. Rand, thank you very much, and keep up the good work, and just keep holding their feet to the fire, and know that the people, there's millions of Americans who don't feel that they have anybody in Washington, except for a few, that they can really trust. And man, the minute you start to feel like, geez, I mean, things are getting dicey here, and I'm tempted. Just call out for help, because there'll be a bunch of people that will just do some sort of exorcism on you.
Yeah, but about the time I get tempted is when you need to send me home, because that's why we still need term limits up here. Turnover would change this place dramatically.
Sure would. Is anybody talking about passing any kind of amendment that makes it so Congress cannot have any special exemptions? Congress has to live on all of the same laws that we do.
Well, I introduced something that wasn't very popular recently. I introduced something that said that you couldn't continue to collect your pension if you wanted to be a lobbyist. And most of these guys, retirement dreams for them is to become a lobbyist. And I actually had a career. I'm going to go back and be a physician again. But the thing is these guys all dream of a multi-million-dollar paycheck for, trying to redistribute the taxpayer dollar. And that is part of the problem, but it's also sort of a symptom, not necessarily the cause. The cause really is just that government's involved in too many affairs, so lobbyists have too much influence. If we had a smaller government, you really wouldn't have to worry so much about the lobbyists. But it is a big problem, and it's a city really manipulated and controlled by lobbyists.
Rand Paul, thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.